I now call to speak Ian Rose, who is our prospective parliamentary candidate for the constituency of Leeds North East.
Good morning. I'm a 26-year-old chartered accountant from Leeds. Now, you don't see many angry chartered accountants, but I am angry. In fact, I am disgusted. I'm disgusted with our politicians, for they are giving away our powers of self-government without our consent. No wonder that my generation has become apathetic, disenchanted, and disinterested in politics. We see patronising, self-interested politicians who are unwilling to trust and consult the people of this country to make this most important decision. Well, let me say to my generation, we must have a referendum. After all, it is our future that is being decided. This is a decision which is too important for politicians. When we awake from our apathy, we may realise that it is too late and we are powerless to change anything. We must not let this happen. We must have a referendum. We must let the people decide. Our generation must decide. It is our future. Now, I have pleasure in introducing Bryan Slater. He's a solicitor from a Manchester firm that has become well known for fighting for the interests of the common man. Among the many examples of their well-known cases are the BCCI bank scandal and the Abbey National share flotation debacle. Bryan Slater is our prospective parliamentary candidate for the constituency of Bolton West. Ladies and gentlemen, Bryan Slater.
Ladies and gentlemen, the sovereignty of our great nation, with the right to govern ourselves, is a prize worth fighting for. As I stand in this hall and I see so many people, so many of us, who says that the people of this country are not interested in the question of sovereignty? At the next election, the Referendum Party will offer our people the right to determine our laws and our government. Our nationhood is at stake. In madness or inertia, even as I speak, we bow down to a European court in Luxembourg. This court has ways of doing things which are anathema to our Constitution, built up brick by brick over half a millennium. In 1975, we voted on the Common Market, which we were told had nothing whatsoever to do with sovereignty. I remember it. Mr. Heath, I knocked on doors at that time. Mr. Heath reassured us of this. Lord Denning knew better because he had read the Treaty of Rome. He warned us that the Treaty of Rome is like an incoming tide. It flows into the estuaries. It flows up the rivers. It cannot be held back. It's equal in force to any of our statutes. By 1990, Lord Denning's incoming tide had become, he said, a tidal wave, bringing down our seawalls and flowing inland over our fields and our houses. Now, he wrote this before Maastricht, before Europe ordered us to buy our petrol in litres. My wife's sitting there, our potatoes in kilograms. She won't buy them in kilograms. Now, how many of us here have ever been into the supermarket and said we want a pound of this or a pound of that, and they've looked at us? We can't do it anymore. Let me run through some pointers about the European Court. Firstly, its judges. They are appointed from, and I quote, persons whose independence is beyond doubt and who possess the necessary qualifications for appointment to the highest judicial office. We've seen some of them on the screens this morning. Did you see some of the way the eyes moved? I hope my eyes are not moving like that now. But in practice, the court is made up of a hodgepodge of former judges, law professors, lawyers in private practice, government legal advisors, and who else? Now, can anybody here name one judge of that court? Know how the judges are picked? Know how they make their minds up? And how many of the people here actually know it sits in Luxembourg? Of these judges, a large percentage are academics who are completely out of touch with reality. It turns out that the court has no sensible ideas of the limits of its powers. On appointment, the judges swear that they will preserve the secrecy of the deliberations of the court, and they are bound to secrecy when they retire. But why all this secrecy? Secrecy pervades this court. Is it something to do with the way that they come to a decision, with dissenters being unable to voice their differences? This is important. If we compare all of this with our own appeal courts in London, if one appeal judge is in disagreement with another in the House of Lords or in the Court of Appeal, he says so, and he publicly explains his differences in a dissenting judgment. Not at Luxembourg, for there any dissent is hushed up. Sworn to secrecy for life, we never learn of any differences between the European judges. Well, why should we be allowed to know? Unlike Luxembourg, our appeal courts follow legal precedent. Luxembourg says, and I quote again, it applies so-called universal principles of written constitutions to individual cases. I know what you're all thinking. That's a laugh. For in Britain, the oldest democracy in the world, the oldest, we don't have a written constitution. The truth is that Luxembourg is the Judge Dredd of European law. Have you seen the film? Lawmaker, judge and jury, inventing law which does not appear in the treaties on the one hand and disregarding their wording on the other. At Luxembourg, they forget the letter of the law. They do what drives them. They make it up as they go along, or follow their mission. Mission, as one Luxembourg judge, a well-known one, put it. So how are we going to predict then what it's going to do next? What is European law from one day to the next? Professor T.C. Hartley says, from the LSE, Luxembourg ignores the distinction between what the law ought to be and what it is, a distinction which is fundamental to the Western concept of law. Why are we tolerating all this? Why have we become so frightened of our own ability to run our own lives that we must give it over to others? Our UK systems of law are nothing like Luxembourg. In the UK, we separate the role of our judges and our parliament. The division of the state and the judiciary is a bulwark of our liberties, but not at Luxembourg. These politicians do not question whether they are judges, or is it the other way around? And the judges not only think they are politicians, but superior to politicians. We go to our UK judges for a judicial review of government actions if ministers get it wrong. Yet in Luxembourg, where is the system of judicial review? For a court that deliberately confuses its role, playing both judge and politician, there is no review system. And guess what? You got it. There's no appeal from the European Court. None at all. No reviews, no appeals, no nothing. Who is containing this court? Nobody. Well, there wouldn't be for superior politicians, would there? I'll have a drink. It's too important not to drink. So at Luxembourg, words mean what the courts say they mean. At Luxembourg, lawyers must advise their clients that anything is possible and everything is arguable. Place your bet on red, or should it be black? At Luxembourg, never mind what Westminster says, this is what Luxembourg says. And Westminster, old darling, you will do what you are told. How can we live with this? What are we even talking about? Why is there a problem here? It's obvious. Of course, the buck must stop somewhere, but what a place to stop. With an untouchable European judiciary, spoiled in political power and ego, answerable to nobody, and without even a fig leaf of political accountability. Oh, what nonsense must go on behind these doors. Now, a good example of Lord Denning's tidal wave is the Spanish fisherman's case. Some of you will know it. Luxembourg has made a member state liable to pay compensation if it finds the state to have infringed European law without any political debate as to whether this is what the member state intended when they set up the European community. So, we have Luxembourg making new law without any political debate whatsoever. And as a result, Spanish fishermen are attempting currently to extract up to £200 million from the UK taxpayer, after we in the UK attempted to stop them breaching fishing quotas. This is what's going on just now. Luxembourg instructed the House of Lords that the rule of English law must be set aside in favour of European law. And that's how the Spanish fishermen are doing what they're doing. I'm here because only the Referendum Party wants to let the people decide on the powers of the European Court, its Parliament and treaties, on the right to make our own foreign policy, determine how our economy is run, and on the abolition of the pound. And that's what they mean when they talk about a single currency, the abolition of our pound. How can a nation abolish its currency without abolishing its way of life? In the heyday of the Beatles and the Stones, I was a kid. I had no war in Europe to remember. Like most, I enjoy visiting other parts of Europe and European friends. But that does not mean that we need a European court and European directives to settle internal UK disputes. I listened to Jeffrey Archer last night. Apparently, we're all Tories here. I'm no Tory. I was brought up in a city that is markedly Labour in Glasgow. I voted Labour all my life and been a member of the party for much of it. Don't tell me that this Referendum Party is some Tory cast-off. All shades of politics are gathered here. But I cannot vote for New Labour, which is as hopelessly as divided on Europe as the Tories, with Tony Blair thinking it's somehow modern to wait 18 years to be elected, become Prime Minister, and then ditch his powers. That is new. And Tony, if you're listening, if you doubt me, just listen to some of those intergovernmental talks that are currently going on in Dublin at the moment. There's a summit in 2 months. Nothing is sacred. They're talking about a Europol, that's a European police force. They're talking about Euro criminal justice and a Europan foreign policy. All to be monitored by, you got it, the European Court of Justice. What will they do next? Parliamentary sovereignty, our liberties and national identity, are far more important than any regular party politics. No wonder Teddy Taylor says, "The Referendum Party will take off like a rocket." The European Court of Justice is the highest court in the land. Whose land, whose purse, and why are we so intent on letting it rule our lives? In Britain, we have the oldest democracy in the world, and generally it works. Let the people decide on this tidal wave of political interference into our lives. This European court that houses politicians dressed up as judges who make laws in a way we've never before known, do we want it? Let the people decide. For goodness sake, ask them.